Hello and welcome to another episode of the Phoblographer's official podcast, Inside the Photographer's Mind. I'm your host, Dan Ginn, the arts and culture editor of the Phoblographer. This week, I sat down with Queens-based photographer Amy Lombard. Amy has worked with the likes of the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Google, Puma, HBO, and a host of well-known names throughout the entertainment industry as well. We had a little bit of a technical issue this week. We do like to bring the video version of the podcast to you in full 4K, but the camera said no. However, we were not going to let that spoil a good show, and a good show it was. Amy's a great guest. She has plenty to say, and we're sure that you're absolutely going to love this episode. Guys, just before we get into it, if you're enjoying the podcast, whatever platform you're listening on, do hit a subscribe, hit a share, comment, like, do it all, because we want to keep giving you the best in upfront audio and visual content. Right, let's get into it. Amy Lombard, how are we?
Oh, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm okay. For anyone listening, I just told Amy off air that I recently experienced my first earthquake, but other than that, I can't complain in life. I've got it pretty sweet, so it's all good. And so where I wanted to, usually when I speak with people, photographers, I like to start from the beginning, but we're not doing that today because I have been itching to talk to you about your website. I see a lot of websites and...
Oh, great. In October.
Pardon? You just read it in October?
I said I did it in October, so
I love it,
about it.
By the way. It's great. I see a lot of
Thank you.
I see a lot of websites, my own included, and we're using website builders and things like that. So there's not much difference other than the photos, of course, which is which we all try and be unique with. But your website is fabulous. I mean, it's got your own stamp on it. It's full of color. It's full of movement, action. Talk to me about it. How did you come up with the concept? Why is this kind of aesthetic good for you?
Yeah, so I did not design it myself. I cannot take the credit there. Alana Schlenker designed my website. She's a super talented art director, designer. I think she's based out of Pittsburgh and New York, back and forth. But I had seen Stephanie Guneau's website, and when I was thinking about redoing my website, basically at one point, a friend of mine had designed it years ago. And then one day it just combusted. And I was like, fuck, what do I do? I need to get my website up ASAP. Clients are emailing me what's wrong with your website? I'm trying to show someone something. And so obviously panic. And so I was like, okay, it's time. So knowing that I liked Stephanie's website, I reached out to Alana, and, we kind of went through talks and figuring out what the branding would be. I knew that I wanted it to feel in terms of if a designer was looking at it, I would want them to think it's cool. I knew that color was important, but it had to be the right balance of color. Otherwise things are going to, with my work, if it's too much of something, if it blinds you with too much color, the way that you perceive the images is completely different. So I was very aware of that and cagey about that. So it took a while, but we got in a great place. We launched the website, I think last October, and especially because I was if I'm going to do this, I'm going to really do this and take my branding so seriously. I had her design a custom treatment for me, but anyway, design and branding, super important to me, and just packaging,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the site really does speak for the work that you make. I think it doesn't look like...
It feels like me.
Yes. Yeah. It speaks to you. And I wondered, I unfortunately don't know what your site looked like before, but have you seen a difference in terms of engagement, clients reaching out or anything? Have you seen kind of a statistical reward of having a new website?
I think I mean, I think in terms of commercial work, I think it definitely helps because with the new site, I have the sections that allow you, if you just want to look at the commercial work, great, go for it. If you want to look at the gifts, there it is. Whereas before I was, my site before was beautiful and it was great, but was limited in terms of what I was able to show on the homepage. So now I feel like I'm able to just show people a ton of things. They can pick and choose what section they want to look at. So I think it has helped. Could I tell you a statistic? No, but I think that it's definitely helped, and people respond to the branding for sure.
And you make a good point because you are very vibrant in your work, and I love that. But you make a good point that sometimes too many powerful colors can be overwhelming. How much kind of back and forth was there with your designer in terms of like getting it right? Did it take a long time? A lot, yeah. And how was that process?
Yeah, I mean, Alana's style is like amazing, but some things that like I think that the balance for me is keeping something cool and the right amount of zany. Otherwise, like I said, the context is so important in the packaging of how you're seeing something. So like there was quite a bit of back and forth, especially in regards to something like the logo and the font, which is a huge part of it. So it was a lot of back and forth. It took months, but we got to a place where we were both like, yes, this is it. And actually something funny with the font. So I collect vintage toys, and excellent. Right next to my desk, I have this, but like, funny, the font was the thing that I was like really probably the most insane about. And the only one that I liked was this one. And then like, as soon as we solidified everything, like I looked up at the wall, I'm like, it's basically the same font as the thing that I stare at all day.
Okay.
Like, of course.
Are you collecting toys to photograph them, or is that just a thing you like to do? Is it just a collection thing?
It's just a thing. It's just a thing that I like to do. I like, like you can't see it. I mean, you're on my iMac right now, so I can't like flip it like a laptop. I have like a wall of vintage toys. I like them because they speak to certain eras. Mm-hmm. Like I have Trump the Game, which is his board game, which came after his book. Let's see. I have like a Ronald Reagan costume mask.
Yeah.
I have Brady Bunch stuff. Like to me, it like tells you so much about culture at different times.
That's great.
And it's like not that unlike what my interests are as a photographer. Mm-hmm. Like I'm interested in what is shaping the culture now. And like when I look at the toys, you kind of see history. So, yeah.
I think, you speak on kind of, was it a Trump mask that you had? Or a Trump board game? Is that what you said?
I have a Ronald Reagan mask.
A Ronald Reagan.
And so I have so I have a Trump, it's called Trump the Game. And the tagline is, it's not whether you win or lose, but whether you win, which I feel like is just the most fitting thing for that idiot.
But okay, so you've given some slight opinion there, but the question I was going to actually ask is because you don't seem. I saw as well on your website there was a bit with Ben Shapiro. Shapiro, am I saying that right? Ben Shapiro. Yeah. So. Quite polarizing characters. Donald Trump, obviously, very much a polarizing character. Do you try and not let kind of any personal feelings or emotional feelings about the people like get in the way of kind of keeping a dialogue of history, a dialogue of culture, whether it's photographic or toys or board games? Is it some people would be like, I'm not having that in my house kind of thing, but with you seem kind of open-minded. Is that fair?
I mean, do I worry that sometimes it reads as like if somebody were to come into my house and see, because like I have a few Trump things up here, and I'm like, because sometimes I'm like, oh my God, do they think that like I'm this person? But in regards to photographing things and being like, okay, I'm not going to like put my bias on it. After like the last year and a half, it's like I can't even just like bite my tongue. Like I have an opinion about it. Like what he did was not okay. What he stands for is not okay. And yeah, I'm sure that comes out in, photographs sometimes. But like, for instance, I spent a day with Newt Gingrich at the zoo. And, it was his idea to go to the zoo. He wanted to be a zoologist when he was growing up. But like, I went into that day without, of course, I don't agree with literally his entire life. But I went into that day completely open-minded. We're doing something that is non-political. And, like I captured what was happening, what I felt like was without bias.
Mm-hmm.
And then naturally he hated me regardless. So, yeah, it's complicated.
I mean, because you have photographed a lot of high-profile people from the music industry, entertainment, and every walk of life, and we all have opinions. And it's what helps you kind of go in with an open mind, even if you do have a, predisposition or thought about this person. What helps you to go in with an open mind so you can photograph from an unbiased standpoint? Because it's hard to do that when you're maybe with someone who you think I would not go for cocktails with you, but I have to now photograph you and portray you in a way that is trustworthy, ethical, or whatever. How do you do that? How do you manage that balance?
Ultimately we're all people.
Mm-hmm.
I think regardless of our political opinions or what we stand for, there's common ground that you can find with people regardless of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like in regards to like political stuff, like I grew up in Pennsylvania where it's super red. So like I grew up having to coexist with these people. So, to go in and photograph someone like a political figure, I'm not, with the exception of like Donald Trump, I'm not instantly demonizing this person, and same goes for non-political figures. Like you just have to find common ground with people.
What common ground did you find with Lil Wayne?
What was that?
What common ground did you find with Lil Wayne?
Well, that shoot was actually kind of funny. So it was at the Strand. It was when his book came out a few years ago. And it was one of those scenarios where it was like, I'm assuming he didn't want to pose for a portrait session, or his wranglers weren't allowing it. Mm-hmm. So I had to go there and make photographs of him. And I got like 1 minute. And so he's leaving the Strand bookstore, which photographing in a retail environment, who wants that? And so I just plopped him in front of the red door. And he always puts his chin up. And I was like, can you just put your chin down? He's like, what is this, a real photo shoot? I was like, it's actually sort of.
There is a camera here.
Yeah, so
I'm a photographer.
There was no conversation, but yeah.
So you only got 1 minute.
Make the best.
You got 1 minute to do that. So I think this is a good peek behind the curtain for budding photographers who may not realize that there are times where it's not kind of a planned, choreographed, we've got all day, take your time photo shoot. It's literally like, you have 1 minute, do it right. And that's a lot of pressure.
Right.
How do you manage that pressure?
Well, let me tell you the ultimate pressure that I faced.
Yes.
So a few years ago, Women's Wear Daily sent me to photograph Ariana Grande. Mm-hmm. We get there. It's a total fucking fiasco. She, they don't want her to be photographed. Finally, after some back and forth, they're like, okay, you can wait in this. It was basically like a fan meet and greet that I was allowed to go in and take photos of her. So I literally wait in line with her fans. And when I finally get up there, they're like, you're allowed to take one picture. One frame. What if she blinked? Seriously, like I was only allowed one. She was not blinking. Thank God. But yeah, I mean, it's like I feel like that's the case more often than not. Like if you're doing editorial jobs, you know, you kind of have to assume the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Like when someone's like, "Oh, you have a half hour with someone," I'm like, "Wow, how luxurious," you know? Because a lot of the time, people just like don't want to give the time, you know?
Yeah, and I think some. It depends what kind of individual you are, but some people will thrive off that kind of pressure. Whereas other people, if they're in a scenario where they've got too much time to think about it, they'll start to get in their own head or something like that. Like, what description best suits you? Do you work best when it's kind of like all guns blazing, or when it's more of a methodical, all day, half a day, whatever kind of?
You know, I think I thrive under the pressure of it because it's like one of those things, sink or swim.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I need this to work.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't give yourself the option for it not to.
Yeah.
But you know, it's like you can only get what you get in those scenarios, and you just kind of hope for the best.
Absolutely.
Fortunately, I haven't had any. I'm probably definitely jinxing myself now, but even when I'm given like 2 minutes with someone, I haven't had a total disastrous thing where like absolutely nothing was usable. But like I said, I definitely just jinxed myself. So
touch wood. Touch wood. You have that saying in the States, right? It's not just an English saying. Touch wood. Good luck, whatever.
Yep. Yes.
In terms of kind of now, in this moment, you've been doing photography for a considerable amount of time. How would you describe your current relationship with photography?
Right now it feels like better than ever. Like I feel like the past few years I've been in kind of like a dark period of my life. There's been like a lot of terrible things that have happened to me and my family. And like, I just, honestly, I didn't really feel like I had the drive.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't feeling like particularly creative either. But after some things happened this year, like I feel like I've got that drive back, especially, you know, post COVID. I want to be around people. I want to be creating. I started doing video, which is just like seeing the world with like Technicolor vision, which has opened up a whole other like creative outlet for me. So like my relationship with photography right now is great. Like I just want to keep creating things, and I feel like my relationship with it has kind of like changed as well during the pandemic. Whereas like I think before, my sense of self-worth was really like tied to like what documentary project am I working on right now? And now it's like, you know what? I just want to create things that are fun with my friends, and I want to enjoy life.
Yeah. And
so photography is a big part of that. So yeah, things are much better.
Did we won't go into detail of the dark phase that you speak of. I mean, unless you want, but we absolutely don't have to. But did photography?
I mean, we can.
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say my mom died.
Okay.
And it was like the past, you know, she had colon cancer. And so it was like 2.5 years of suffering, and she passed almost a year ago. But it was, you know, it was a lot of being in Pennsylvania where they live, and, you know, and once she passed, I was like, okay, I have to like, I spent a lot of time taking care of her. I have to get my life back. I have to get my bearings, and I have to really try to be happy. And so photography is like the puzzle piece for me. Yeah. So I'm so grateful that that's what that is for me. It's a huge therapy, you know?
Yeah. I think, and that's kind of what I wanted to ask is because yes, there will be especially when you're dealing with something as significant as your mother being ill and then eventually passing, you know, there's naturally going to be times where the things we love the most in terms of what we enjoy to do creatively, it gets, you know, kind of put on the shelf for a bit. Was it a case of you kind
Right.
of came out of that darkness, then picked up the camera, or in some way was the camera kind of also a catalyst of helping you try and move forward and, you know, rebuild your life and the joy of it, if you will?
I think a little bit of both. You know, like I think the work, like actually getting back to work, like someone hiring me to do something was like the first kind of like push forward. Um, it was like sort of crazy. So my mom died on a Friday. On Monday, I get this like cryptic email from an agency about like a job. And I was like, I don't even know if I'm like in the space to do it. And it ended up being this enormous Google job that like it forced me to do something and it forced me to be creative when I didn't feel like it was possible for me. And it literally saved my life. Like I can't imagine that period of my life without being forced to go to work, to communicate with people, to be creative and to force yourself. And that, and, you know, being on a big set for the first time since, you know, she passed, it was like, right, this is what makes me happy. This is like what makes my world go round. And, you know, even with the exception of my mom dying, you know, like you forget those things during COVID when we're all stuck inside. So it was pretty illuminating. And then from there, I just really felt the drive to create things for myself. Like I went through a period of time where I was like making these like ridiculous dog manicures on my dog. I went through like an ASMR video phase. Like
I've
I
got
feel
questions
like
about
I'm
that.
having fun for the first time in a long time. It's been great.
That's
Feel good.
amazing. That's, and you know, and
Yeah.
that's just, it's a testament to how powerful photography can be, creativity in general, really. And
Absolutely.
you said you've transitioned into video as well now. Was that kind of always a career goal for you, or was it just something like, you know, you had a lot of time to think and then you were like, hey, why don't I give this a shot?
Yeah. You know, it's the kind of thing, even when I was in school, it's like that idea of doing video is always like over your head
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, on the client side of things, even like, you know, personal work or whatever aside, it's like, oh yeah, but can you do video? And if you can't, you know, that takes a lot of jobs off the table.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a very stubborn person. So I was like, okay, don't hire me. And you know, I always thought like, eventually, but I never really saw how I could translate my style, specifically the lighting,
Mm-hmm.
for video in a way that wasn't totally bizarre. Because like, you know, with the exception of like music videos, you don't see this really like strobe like lighting in video. Your eye is not accustomed to it. It's
Mm-hmm.
weird. Um, but it was weird. Like one day, I woke up one morning in February, and I was like, I'm doing it today. And I was like, it's like I'm just going to spend a shit ton of money at B&H and like see what it looks like. And fortunately, like it happened kind of quickly, where I was like, oh, okay, I can make this work. And then it just opened up a whole other world for me. I
Mm-hmm.
just got my first TV commercial.
Awesome.
No big deal. Very excited. So I feel like I'm really excited, and I'm always interested in telling a story. And I think video is going to be like a huge platform for me.
From kind of like a technical aspect, how did you find the transition? Because although the two are very much linked, often stills and motion, you know, that they are different practices.
Totally different.
So
Yeah. No, totally different.
how did you find that kind of looking at something from a motion sense and kind of technically where do you feel you're at, say comparatively with making photographs with video? How confident are you doing it? How do you feel about learning it? And yeah, how's that journey been?
Yeah. Well, one, it's really fun to learn something new. My technical knowledge of it absolutely sucks. You know, like I shoot a lot and then I get a little bit that's usable. But that's kind of like the fun of it too. But I watched I like told all my friends, I'm like, I got a master's from YouTube. Like I literally just like watched a ton of videos trying to figure it out. But
Yeah.
originally I was convinced, I was like, oh, I want a camcorder. Cause like I love the camcorder zoom. Um, but I bought a Canon camcorder and it just like, it was too grainy. I ended up settling on the R5,
Okay.
which fucking rules. I
Yeah.
only shoot Canon. I'm a creature of habit and I love Canon products.
That's fine. That's good.
And then can call me if they want. I'm around. But it worked out. Like it's a great camera. It's small. I feel like I can move around with it in the same way that I do as a still photographer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's still like I'm very much still learning.
Yeah.
But time will hopefully make me better.
I think that's something that photographers, creatives in general, should take on board. Is when you get comfortable in something, that's great and all, but it's important to put yourself in situations where you're vulnerable again, because I've often thought any relationship, whether it's a relationship with a friend, a partner, a hobby, the beginning is like the infatuation period, if you will, is so thrilling and exciting, and often with photography we don't get that again, unless you take a long break or you experience a different kind of genre of photography. But I think a lot of people should go out and try new things. Don't be against doing video. Don't be against doing a genre of photography that's something you've never done before, because A, it's exciting, and B, it can, and I don't know if this happened with you, you can tell me, but sometimes it can help you fall back in love with the thing that you loved originally, because you learn to appreciate it more. You're like, yeah, I'm doing this cool stuff, but I really like street photography, or that's where I'm at, or something like that, or portraits or commercial, whatever it is. Did you feel that by doing video you got deeper into the craft of photography as well?
I think it made me appreciate it in a way that I maybe overlooked it a little bit, because it's like you get, like you were saying, you get so comfortable with things, especially like, I've been doing this professionally for like almost a decade at this point, and it's like, yeah, you just get too comfortable, too complacent. So to have something new, it kind of brings like a new energy into whatever I'm doing. So yeah, it's great. I love this like period, like the best, like you were saying, the best periods of your life are when something is new. Like I look back and I like romanticize the time when I decided to freelance full time, because I'm like, what a rush. That's kind of how I feel now, where I'm like, I don't totally know what I'm doing. I'm kind of faking it till I make it, but it feels like a new period of my life, which in my 30s, I'm grateful for.
I relate to that so much, because just a little self-disclosure, I started being a nomad 4 years ago, and so I've been traveling for 4 years, and that beginning period, like you say, you take that risk, like with freelancing, it's a big jump, but then when it starts paying off, you're like, oh, this is amazing. And then I found myself caught myself the other day just like complaining about the thing that I dreamed about doing. And it's I don't know if you ever find yourself doing that, but it's important sometimes just to check in and have a bit of gratitude for the thing that made you
1,000%.
really. Yeah.
Right. I always, if I'm complaining about a job or I don't want to go to a shoot one day, I always am like, don't think that way, because people aren't going to hire you. Like, check yourself. There's a million people on this planet who want to be doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think checking yourself in and remembering to be grateful, of course it's easier said than done, but it's necessary. Like, to be able to do what you love, there are very few people on this earth that get to do that,
Yeah. And so you kind of mentioned it. And I'm intrigued about this because I'm not fully aware or educated on what it is. ASMR. I saw one of your videos, and so I was doing a little bit of research, and I saw this video, and I think you were making noises with props and stuff like that. And for those that don't know what ASMR is, although it has risen in popularity, especially over the past 5 or so years, is that just something that is that like another career path you want to go down, or is it just a bit of like what is ASMR to you? Why are you doing it?
Well, I did take a little bit of like it's on the back burner a little bit. But I am gonna to be totally honest with you, I got like press on nails, and I wanted like my ASMR branding to be like these like red long nails. And then once I got vaccinated, I love getting my nails done. So I was like, well, I can't wear my red press on. So honestly, that's like literally the reason why I haven't really been doing it. But what I like about ASMR is how mesmerizing it is to people. And I'm like, well, and there's so many great visual examples on YouTube that I don't feel like get the artistic merit that they deserve. But I was like, what if like my version of ASMR is really like, there's almost something fetishy about the nails combined with the lighting. It's like this cinematic whole experience. But like, would it be another, like at one point I was like, oh, I could make this like whole YouTube channel, and make it a whole thing. I have not delivered on that at all. Maybe at some point, but yeah, I mean, for me, it just goes back to like doing something that is fun for me and is like another creative outlet. Does it have to be a career? No, absolutely not. There's like plenty of like 22-year-old YouTubers who can have that, but I'll have fun making stupid videos.
Well, yeah, I mean, the video I saw, I didn't find it stupid. I found, you're right. I found it. I just kept watching it, and I was like, I don't know. And this isn't a criticism of anything that you made. It was just I'm not sure why I'm watching this, but I just couldn't stop. I was like, what you, and the noises. I listened to it with headphones because I did a bit of research. So I listened to ASMR with headphones. I don't know. Is it meant to be therapeutic? Is it meant to be relaxing? Is it meant to be what?
So if like for people who respond to ASMR, if you hear it in a certain way, it gives you like tingles. So yeah, for a lot of people it's therapeutic. For some people it's like nails on a chalkboard, which a lot of people, like I joined a bunch of Facebook groups when I first started doing them, and people were like, no, make it stop. And they're like, I have chills in a bad way. And I was like, oh my God. But it's also interesting on a technical aspect. Audio editing is very difficult. Like that's a whole other hurdle that a video that I am just not quite prepared for.
Well, it's a great venture, and I think it's the more you can, especially something like that where the sound is kind of the thing. I imagine a lot of people listen to that maybe with their eyes closed. So learning how to nail that is no pun intended, but learning how to get that great is going to be great for any skill set in anything. Now, I want to go back a little bit. I read an interview, and I saw that you were influenced by a lot of street photographers. Are you doing any kind of candid photography just in your own leisurely time? Do you like to go out on the street? I know it's a bit of a weird time for being in public, but is there any drive there to just go out and I was going to say flash strangers, then that's not what I meant, to point your flash at strangers and make photographs?
I mean, not in like a Bruce Gilden type of way, like go out and shoot people on the street and blind them. No, I mean, that's actually like never been my thing. But in terms of like going somewhere, documenting a group of people, certainly. But with COVID, everything is kind of like, what's happening? Like all of the things where it would be me going into like a real life situation and capturing candid moments, they pretty much don't exist right now. So I think that's why, another layer of like why I feel like I've been creating more rather than taking. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that's great. And I think because you do use Flash, and I appreciate you say it's not your style, but just kind of out of curiosity, what is your opinion of the whole? Because Bruce Gilding kind of pioneered it, shall we say, and then now, especially when I was starting out in London, there was a lot of photographers that they kind of took a thrill out of just going up to strangers and with the Flash and just snapping them, and and Bruce has done it great, but I think it kind of then became, I don't know. What's your opinions of that? Because candid photography is polarizing. Do you think it's okay if it's a free reign in a public space if you want to go someone in a kind of a kind of way?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a fucking legend, obviously. Would I want to be photographed by him? No. As a vain person, no, absolutely not. But am I against it? No, because it's like, I don't think that we can, what we loved about the historical aspect of street photography is that people didn't know. So now that people are hyper aware that they're being documented at all times, like, I feel like those moments are still important. And if that's someone's artistic expression, I don't see anything wrong with it personally. I know that there's like always a debate, consent over being photographed, yada, yada, yada. It's complicated. But I'm for it.
The kind of mantra, if you will, that I'm trying to go by is because I've been shooting street for quite a long time, and I always say to myself, if I ever get to a stage where my mind, for whatever reason, says I would not like someone to do what I'm doing to me, then I'm going to stop doing it.
Yeah.
But I don't care. I love it. I would love someone to come up and take my picture. I'd be like, yeah, even if it was, candid or a little quick street portrait, I'd be like, absolutely. Thank you. But yeah, I think I always try and judge, because ethics in any kind of photography, everyone's got their opinions, but I think we should always just judge it from our own stance. If we would be comfortable with someone doing something to us, then it's cool, as long as we're respectful.
Yeah. No, totally. And I mean, like on the flip side, like imagine you don't know anything about photography and someone comes up and takes a picture of your face. Of course you're going to feel violated, Does that mean that picture shouldn't exist? I don't think so. Does that make it a pleasant experience? Absolutely. So.
And yeah, I think as well, we think it feels or it's violating, or it's an invasion of someone's personal space, but it's not necessarily always bad to make someone feel uncomfortable, if that makes sense, as long as you're not kind of like purposely trying to trigger someone. But if you're if someone goes, oh, that took me by surprise, it's like, if you have to have a quick conversation afterwards, that's fine, but we shouldn't be afraid to create on the basis of offending someone.
I agree 1,000%.
So I just want to, you mentioned obviously you had the difficult period, and then the Google gig was kind of the catalyst. What kind of, when did that Google gig come in terms of the pandemic? Was it before the pandemic?
No, it was during.
Okay.
It came about in October of 2020. Okay. Like end of October. But yeah, shooting during, that could be an entirely different conversation. Shooting during the pandemic, a very complicated thing that I don't think there's really any way to make it like completely safe, but yeah, crazy times.
Because the reason I was, pandemic. The reason I was asking that question is because, you just found this spark again, and then we're dealing with a time where we can't kind of do the thing that makes us happy. And I don't know, because you, it might have been difficult for you to measure, but like, because am I right in saying you took some time off while you were caring for your mum and things like that? Is that correct?
Yeah, I took about like 3 or 4 months off.
Okay.
But before that, like the period of time when right when the pandemic started, I avoided going home just because, like, God forbid I got her sick with COVID. Like, she would have been dead in 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, I got COVID like end of March. I'm in Jackson Heights, which in Queens was like the epicenter of the epicenter. So everyone had COVID here. So I lost my sense of taste and smell for about like a few months, actually. And so one of the things that it's interesting because it didn't happen to you, you don't realize how depressing, and it just like literally zaps the joy out of life to not be able to smell things or taste things. Everything, it's like we have nothing that's enjoyable. We can't even eat. So like I just began like obsessively photographing macro shots of food. So like for me, it's like there was always like, okay, I can't go out and be around people right now, but I can photograph, what's in front of me. And for me, that was like an obsession with food. So I think that it's important, if you're a creative person and your self-worth is built on creating things, like you have to adapt, because what's the, the other thing is like, then you're just fucking miserable,
Did you, I'm just thinking if I would do that, because if I couldn't taste, that'd be awful, but I'm not sure I would then put delicious food in front of me. Like, did that kind of help you keep that relationship with food, or were you kind of torturing yourself, like, because there's this glorious food in front of you?
Myself.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was also the thing, like, I was like, will I be able to taste this? No. And like I would just like, it was the day that I was able to like get a little bit of my taste back, I cried. It's like, thank you, I can taste this meatball. Thank fucking God. But yeah, it was definitely torture.
Speaking of tasting meatballs, I was
just like eating matzo, and I was like,
depressing. Meatballs.
Like, I might as well just eat this. There's nothing else.
There's nothing else.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Meatballs. This is a great segue. Because I love reflecting, and you did, I think, is it 10 years ago now, the IKEA, the project? It was Happy Inside.
Yep, 10 years ago.
10 years ago. So I think it's because it's it's nice to look back and see how we thought about something. And if you look at that project now, the Amy Lombard of now, and you're looking back and in terms of the concept and the execution, like, how do you feel that you did? How do you feel about the project in general 10 years later?
I still think it's a great idea.
Mm-hmm. I
am amazed at my relentlessness and my balls to keep doing that. Like, mm-hmm. I was going into IKEAs for like a year and a half and just not giving a fuck. Like, just taking pictures of people, in that Bruce Gilden type way. They didn't have consent.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't care. Like, I think that, it's not something I would do now because I am aware of the legal implications. Whereas when you're like 20, the world doesn't touch you. So,
yeah.
No, and even just like style wise, it's obviously still me. It was a different camera, different flash, but it still feels like part of who I am,
That's good. So you don't look back and think, oh God, what was I thinking? Like you're still kind of, you've got a positive connection.
Yeah, I was like, wow, I was clever.
And it's an interesting point you raise, because I sometimes think about this, and I sometimes yearn for a younger me. And it sounds like you have as well. Like the older we get, the kind of more maybe socially aware we become, and the kind of ballsy, like, oh, I don't care, what's the worst that's going to happen? Someone will tell me to piss off, or I'll get kicked out of IKEA. You know, we just don't worry about that, and then I'm trying to find that person within me again. But do you think we just get to a certain age where it's just gone? It's just gone, and we're just mindful, and we care about other people, and
I think it's just gone.
that's sad.
Like, I also think, you know, the older you get, the more you have to lose.
Yeah.
Like, the trickle down effect, if I were to do something like that now. Okay, someone sues me. I lose my house. I lose my car. Do I lose my family? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I just feel like at 20, it's like, I'm the only thing that matters. Nothing will touch me. You know? Like, you're just so, at least myself, just like blissfully naive. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe the kids are different now. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I mean, I kind of hope they're not different. I think it's good to have a phase of your life where you just don't care about any of the risks, and, you know, just focus on the reward regardless. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. I'm very grateful for that period. It was fun.
Yeah. Are there any kind of, aside from your client work, is there kind of any ideas for projects coming up, or something that you'd really like to focus on, or even that you're just in the early stages of kind of thinking about in terms of personal photographic creativity?
Well, the one thing that I'm thinking about right now, and that I've sort of started, is photographing kidfluencers. So like I was on, me and my fiance did like a little road trip to Florida. And I was just like, you know, it was his turn driving, and I was just looking at the Explore page on Instagram, and for whatever reason, like Fashion Nova Kids popped up, and I just went through this tunnel vision, like finding all of these like little kids who dress like adults and have like a whole branding thing. Like they really are personalities and look like adults at the age of 3.
It's scary.
And I'm just, it's a whole different world. It's truly a different world. So I've started photographing them. That's very like early days, but
Nice.
That's something I'm interested in. And that I'm kind of like working towards in terms of like just like a personal project. And I'm also working on like a few, like I want to do kind of like short little films about something specific.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just trying to like get the creative juices flowing and actually like execute those things.
Do you think this is a fair statement about you? Just judging from kind of your linear of work, you know, you did kind of the meetup things with the Pokemons and the things like that. Do you, and now with the kidfluencers, am I saying that right? Kidfluencers? Do you like to put yourself into worlds that you know nothing about, but that completely interests you, and then use photography as a gateway to understand those worlds? You think that's fair? Do you enjoy doing that?
1,000. Yes, I totally. If I'm interested in, it's like, I don't like something. I love something. I'm one of those people who's like totally obsessive. When it's something I'm like, oh, interesting. So yeah, I mean, like the meetups were like classic example of that. Same with the kidfluencers. It's like using photography as a way to understand the world around you is like such a beautiful thing. It's so cool. And like the camera, you know, it's like that cheesy saying, the camera gives you a license to yada, yada, yada. But it's true. Like it really is a gateway into other worlds that maybe you wouldn't experience otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And I think that's just going back to the gratitude thing, why not just you and I, just creatives in general, we have to be so grateful for the opportunities that come from it. I mean,
Yeah.
Like just going back to your example with the Google gig, like, yes, okay, that's something that was brought to you, but had you never picked up that camera, I don't want to kind of hypothesize on this topic too much, but you could have been in that difficult place even longer, because it was a difficult time.
No, it's so true. I'm just like, for people who don't have, I guess everyone has like their version of like what would pull you out of something,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm just really grateful that I have this outlet that I know will force my mind to move in a different direction if I have to create something. So it's like, I don't know what other people do, but I hope that everyone has their version of that.
Yeah.
So, life moves on. You have to move forward however you can.
I'm not going to keep you too much longer because I appreciate you have a life outside of me, even though I don't want to accept it. But just got a couple of more questions. I mean, okay. So you've well, in my opinion, you've really kind of nailed down your style, and it's great, and you are, you're a great professional. But even at this stage in your career, kind of relationship with photography, do you find yourself looking at other photographers' work and thinking, damn, I wish I could make photos like that, or how do they do that, or just getting some kind of inspiration? No?
I mean, I appreciate what other people do, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's a good idea. But I don't feel envy in that kind of way. We're like, oh, I wish I could do that. Like it's weird. I just like, I mean, maybe if I'm like, just from like the business side of things, like if I'm up for a job against someone, I'll be like, damn it. Like, why did they get it and I didn't? But in terms of just like comparing work in general, like I don't know. I feel like I am who I am, and it's hard I'm such a specific thing that it's hard for me to compare myself to someone else.
Yeah.
Which I think is good, because I can, comparing yourself to other people, whether it's just like, how you look, work, whatever, it's horrible. It's truly, there's nothing beneficial about it. It just drives me mad. So,
and I think that's good. A good way to live is to, instead of focusing how can I be as good as the other person, it's better to think how can I be the best version of me. And I think that helps us.
Yeah,
that helps us evolve more. In terms of your style, do you kind of feel that you've got your style and you're just going to run with it and just keep expanding the client base and just getting cool gigs and enjoying your work? Or is there kind of like, from a photographic standpoint, is there a part of you that wants to evolve your style or take it down a completely different avenue that maybe people aren't used to seeing, maybe take the flash off or whatever that may look like? Is there any part of you that sees you changing or anything?
I think that my way of changing isn't going to be like an aesthetic style.
Mm-hmm.
I think like I guess one thing I've learned in life is never say never, but I would be totally shocked if one day you see me making like airy, natural photographs. Like, it's just like the antithesis of like what I am, even as a person. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, hello. But I think that the way that I evolve is the platforms in which I do it. Like, I think that video, like how I evolve as a storyteller, the kind of things that I do, to me, that's kind of like, of course, I want to be a better photographer. I want to connect with people in deeper ways. And I want the photographs to get better and better and better. But I think evolving is probably like a platform thing, is kind of how I see it.
I mean, your brand is so on point. I mean, as soon as I saw the decor in your home, I was like, everything is just, and I think it's because sometimes with photographers, I do feel that they're not authentic. They've got maybe their brand kind of together, but they're not authentic. But I think with you, just to kind of, give you some praise and not make you feel uncomfortable about it. But I think with you is you everything you do, whether it's photography, video, ASMR, decorating your house, all of it is an extension of you, and it feels so authentic, which is, I think, is a wonderful thing to have, and I think that's one of the main reasons why you're doing so well with your career, because people see that, they see that this isn't kind of an act. This is who you are, and everything of what you create is an extension of that. So yeah, I applaud you for that. I think that's a wonderful thing. Even your nails. Okay.
Thank you. So nice.
But Amy, I appreciate you speaking with me, and it's been a wonderful conversation. I've enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed it. I know everybody listening will have enjoyed it as well. Excellent. Well,
thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
Thank you so much. You take care.
All right.
Guys, that was another episode of the Phoblographer's podcast, Inside the Photographer's Mind. We really hope that you liked this episode. It was great to sit down and chat with Amy. We'll be back again next week with another guest. Just a quick reminder again, guys, to hit a like, subscribe, share the podcast, and we'll see you again next time. Cheers.